Okay, tonight's kayak adventure is called a slice of turkey. I'm having a hard time not making jokes about that. However, Norm Smythe, Pat Hill, and Vic Tarrington are going to be our three presenters tonight, so would you please come up? Here's the magic tool.
Thank
That's
you.
the button. Okay.
Marhaba, everyone. Marhaba. Marhaba, that means good day, hello.
Turkish.
So I was thinking as I was kayaking today, what a lovely day today was. And then I thought, where was I 9 months ago? I was in Turkey. So it was about 10 degrees warmer.
At least.
The water was 26 degrees. The water was turquoise blue. The places we were paddling by were 3,000 years old. There was ruins, there was archaeology, history, unbelievable.
You felt young again.
So there was three of us went on this trip, Victor, Pat and I, and we were there for about a week. And the way it happened was kind of interesting. Victor and I and the Salties had just finished a week out in Gabriola Island. And as we left, Vic said, "Hey Norm, where are we going next year?" So we had no idea. So I get home and on my computer is this email from Exodus Travels, Kayaking in Turkey. So I jokingly sent it on to the group and said, well, how about we do this? And lo and behold, it morphed into, we actually went kayaking in Turkey. So now I have to start with an acknowledgement, not the usual acknowledgement, but first of all, none of these pictures are mine. They're all Pat's. Maybe one or two are Victor's. And the reason for that is my camera got stolen in Istanbul. So I was unable to take pictures, but fortunately, Pat was able to share all our pictures. Secondly, all this PowerPoint presentation was put together by Pat. So Victor and I had the easy job, just critiquing it and commenting on it. So the way we're going to do this is I'll start off, talk about the first part of the trip, cover 2 days of paddling. Then Victor wants to do the best day paddling, so he'll do day number 3. And then Pat will take over, talk about the last 2 days paddling, and then the day off that we had at the very end of the trip. And of course the trip starts with the day getting there and the day leaving there. So we'll cover all of that. So now, where did we go? Test this. Here we go. So we flew into Istanbul independendly. We all had our own travel arrangements. When we got to Istanbul, we all went our separate ways. I signed up for a 2-week tour of Istanbul with Exodus Travel as well. And my tour covered all of this coastline, down to Antalya, up to Cappadocia, and then flew back to Istanbul. And I met up with Victor in Istanbul. He had done another trip flying around Turkey, somewhere down here and here, Cappadocia and back. And Pat had also arrived, and she was holed up somewhere down here, golfing and touring. So we basically all met up at our destination, which was near a town called Gocek. And Gocek is an hour and a half south of Istanbul. And while this picture is up here, I should let you know that this is the Black Sea, but it's misnamed. It's not black. It's the Blue Sea. It's totally blue. Now, Gocek is a yachty place, a yachty harbor. So our location for our first couple of days paddling was out east of Gocek, and we paddled in this area. And I'll show you some detail later. And then after 2 days there, we were transported by bus down past Kash to a place here, we'll call it Kakova, because there's an island there, Kakova Island, that is unbelievably historical and unbelievably beautiful.
Don't steal Vic's thunder.
No. Yeah, that's Vic's thunder. After 3 days kayaking there, we were bused back to Cash and were given a day off to do nothing. And Pat will tell you all about the beauties of Cash. Then after that, we had to get a bus, and it was provided to us by Exodus Travels, all the way back to the airport here at Dalaman to get our flights back to wherever we were going. Pat went to the UK, and Vic and I went back to Istanbul and did other things. So what we're going to talk about now is our kayaking experience in this area here. So we're in southwest Turkey. We're on the Mediterranean, and you can see some Greek islands here, Rhodes you're familiar with, but there's some little islands down here that'll show up in some of the pictures that are also owned by Greece. Right, so we all made our way to the Riverside Hotel, which was outside of Gocek. And here's Vic checking out the pool. I don't know where the beer is. And this is the main building where we had our meals. And there was sort of cabins, or it was like a motel setup, individual rooms wrapped around the pool. The good news is the pool was beautiful. The rooms were all air conditioned, and which was really appreciated. We had dinner at that hotel the first night, a home-cooked meal by the owners of the hotel, and we met our other travelers. So there was 3 of us from Victoria, and another guy from Toronto, Mike. He happened to be an ER nurse, so Victor and I were delighted to have somebody around who could help us if we had any troubles.
Yeah, heart attacks.
In fact, Pat didn't need him, but Victor and I did. Then there was these 2 couples from the UK, James and Gillian, and Claire and Hannah. And you'll see pictures of them later. That night we met up with our guide, so we'd never met him before. His name was Alper, and his assistant Deborah. Alper was a fantastic guy. He was about 30 years old, fit as a fiddle, extremely strong kayaker. Whenever you were in a double with Alper, you didn't have to paddle at all, and he still was out in front of everybody else. When Alper paddled, there was a bow wave in front of his kayak. His English was impeccable. His knowledge of the history of Turkey was unbelievable. So we were really fortunate to have such a wonderful, wonderful guide. Alper and Bura meant we had no work to do. All we had to do is get down to the boats, put on our life jackets, jump into the boats, pick up our paddles and kayak. And at the end of the day, we get out of our boats, go back and have a beer, and they look after getting the boats out of the water, putting them on trailers, tidying up, whatever. I like this valley kayaking.
Yeah.
So where do we go next? So the first day, you see here, we're walking to the beach. The reason we were at this hotel was because it was about 1 kilometer from a nice, quiet beach. And so here we are walking down the road. That's me, and there's Victor, and that's probably Mike beside him. These are 2 of the gals from the UK. And we get down to a beach, and here's our boats. And I'll talk later about the equipment and what it was like. And here's our guide, Alfred, taking charge and getting things organized. And here's all our kayaks. They had a transport system to move the kayaks from this beach to where we were later on, which is about 2.5 hours away. So we did 2 days kayaking from this location. So here's the town of Gocek. Gocek, as I mentioned, is a yachty haven full of sailboats and big, massive powerboats. It's the sort of place you wouldn't want to go kayaking. So fortunately, out here, totally quiet, no boats at all. And so our hotel was here, close to the highway, and here's a stream that went by our hotel, and a road that went down to the beach, about 1 kilometer walk, and this is where we walked to get our boats and go kayaking. And after the kayaking, of course, we walked back to our hotel. The first day, we kayaked all the way along this coastline to a beach here where we had lunch, and then paddled back. That distance was about 9 nautical miles, and you can see here the water depths are about 100 meters, plus or minus. The second day was a shorter day. We just kayaked around this peninsula out to this island where we went for a coffee and some eats and a swim. Oh, I forgot to mention, every hour we'd stop and have a swim. This was our built-in air conditioning. So after the swim, we crossed the bay to this side, came along this coast and back to the beach. And we were off the water by early afternoon because we had to go back to the hotel, clean up, get into the van to move to Yucachal for our next few days paddling. And it was about 2.5 hours transport from this location. So the first day was the first chance to see what the coastline is like. So along here, it's pretty rugged coastline, similar to the ruggedness of around here, big granite rocks, caves, arches, beaches. Some of the beaches were stony, some of the beaches were sandy. And this is the beach where we had lunch. And as Pat says, this is probably the most magnificent lunch stop she's ever had. It was the 1st of June, and this place was just opening for the summer. I guess before that, the kids were all at school, and hence they didn't have any business, any clients. So we were there for the day before opening day. So we had lunch there. Now, a little about the water. It's called the turquoise sea, and literally the water is an unbelievable turquoise. This is an example of it. The water temperature is 26 degrees all over this part of the Mediterranean. There's no tides of any significance, maybe a meter max between high and low, so no currents to worry about. When we were there was no winds, no storms, nothing. But the locations they picked for this trip were suitable if there were winds. I think that's why they picked those locations. They were nicely sheltered. So no waves, no currents, warm water. What more could you ask for? Now our equipment. So the boats they had were Prion plastic kayaks made by Prion's a German company. Some of the boats are new. This is Pat and a brand new one here, smiling. Some of them were well used, some of them were doubles, some of them were singles. Every day we basically changed boats so everybody could experience different boats. The paddles were aluminum poles with a Euroblade on top, but they were heavy. I guess we were used to our lighter Werner type paddles, and I noticed by about noon I was feeling, my shoulders were feeling sore just from the weight of those paddles. The paddles were also feathered, so I had to learn how to handle, keep twisting my arm because of the feathering on the paddle.
Could you have taken your own orders? Had you thought about that at all?
I did, but it was too awkward to carry it, and my phone was stolen. What else might have been stolen?
And we were, traveling to different parts of Turkey and then on to other places, so it just wasn't practical.
Yeah. So I would go again and just put up with whatever local is. And this, we've got another trip in the works that's probably what I'll do. Now interesting, we didn't use spray skirts. So I was worried about the sun blasting our knees. So I wore long pants, long sleeve shirt, really light stuff I bought especially for this trip. So I didn't worry about sun exposure, but some people were in shorts. So a good tip we got from our guide is when you're in your boat, just throw a towel over your knee. You're going to need the towel when you go swimming anyhow. And this way you don't have to worry about getting sunburnt on your knees. And of course you don't need spray skirts because the water's so darn warm. You're not trying to keep the water out, you're trying to bring the water in so you can cool down. They had PFDs, dry bags, so we could bring our essential supplies with us, like money. When we stop at places, you could buy a coffee. We also brought lots of water, and the tour guide had water as well if we ran out. Oops. So here's our group. On the left, Pat, me, Victor, and Mike from Toronto, Alper, our guide, the two ladies from the UK, and James and Gillian from the UK. And this is the beach where we had our lunch. Oh, we were also worried before this trip. Well, we all know each other. We know how well we can kayak. We were a little worried. Are we going to end up with people that are useless in a kayak? Well, we didn't have to worry about this crowd. They never did much kayaking, but they all did a lot of canoeing, and they never were at the back of the pack. It was either Vic or me at the back of the pack.
True.
Pat was always out front, of course. Hello, we've got competition here.
Yeah.
Is this Turkish music? So day number 2, we paddled around the point here. You can see some nice stacked rocks. This is the beach where we went to. It was a resort property. There was a nice coffee shop over here where we could buy lattes and cookies and things. And of course, people stop and have a swim. And now you're starting to see some yachts anchored around here. So after the lunch or the coffee stop here, we paddled across the bay along the coastline, and we came across a beach. Well, here we're paddling to that other coastline. And we came across a beach that was full of junk. Now, most of the beaches in Turkey were really clean, but this beach, there was no road access to the water, to the beach, so nobody could get down there with trucks to clean up all the garbage. So we did our usual. We stopped and cleaned up the beach, and we left with loads and loads of garbage and the beach in immaculate condition. Then we moved later that day on a lovely passenger bus, air-conditioned, drove 2.5 hours east. We stopped for a lunch along the way, and we stopped to overlook this beach, which is called Kapatash. Is that right?
Close enough.
Close enough.
Kamal might know.
Kamal is here. Kamal from Turkey is here. Yeah, Kapatash. Kapatash. It's a very famous beach, iconic in a way because of two things. The water is a beautiful blue color right at the shoreline, and secondly, there's big cliffs either side, so it's quite hemmed in. The only problem is to get to the beach, you got to go down 200 steps here. Going down's no problem, but coming back up, a little more of a struggle. And when you get to the beach, there's no shade, so you have to rent one of these umbrellas for shade. Anyhow, moving on, we finally come to our next destination. And so in the distance is this beautiful historic island that Victor is going to tell you about called Kakova. And this is the seaside town where we stayed for 3 or 4 nights. Ukachez, I pronounce it. And Kamal can tell me he did tell me how I should pronounce it, but I can't say it, so I'll say Ukachez.
Ukachez.
Got lots of accents on it there.
Right. So we were in a little pension down about here, waterfront location. Again, lovely rooms, air conditioned, really nice. And our kayaks were over here. And each day we would walk back and forth along the waterfront to our kayaks. The bay is hemmed in on 3 sides. This is the only exit from this bay. That's why it's called Ukachez, because Kamal tells me that means 3 bays, 3 bays, 1 exit or something like that. And so in the bay there's sailboats, mainly for fishing or for touring, and there's visitors, yachts come in and anchor in the bay. So this was a beautiful, beautiful spot. 1 road in, 1 road out. But there's a place even nicer than this that we kayaked to. So the town is pretty, waterfront town, lovely restaurants. Each night we could go to a different restaurant. One night we were sitting at the restaurant having a meal, and a big turtle came swimming by, and people were throwing food to the turtle. Dogs were barking at the turtle. The town was full of ruins and Lycian tombs, sarcophagus. dating back, I don't know, a couple of thousand years maybe. Really pretty town. Hats, sculptures. Now, when we were there, we did 3 paddles. So the best paddle Vic's going to tell you about was across the bay along this coast and back to this town, Samina, for lunch, and then back to Ukachez. The next day, Pat's going to take over at this point and tell you about the other paddles. It was across to this island, all the way up to the end of this bay to
The restaurant.
the restaurant, which is called Upper Lake. Right, Mel? Upper Lake?
That's the ruins, yeah.
Yeah. So Pat will describe that one. That was probably the longest paddle. I'd say that might have been about 10 miles, that paddle. And then the last day was a little shorter paddle along this coastline to an island here with a cave in it. And again, we had to get back, pack up all our stuff, get our vehicle, and we moved again then to the town of Cash for our last night. So at this point, I'm going to turn over to Victor to tell you about the best paddle.
Okay. Thanks very much, Norm. Thanks a lot, Norm. An acknowledgement to Norm, who was sort of masterminded this whole trip, really. And Pat and I eagerly joined him. I'd never been to Turkey before, and it was a great opportunity. And as he mentioned, I took an 8-day trip before the paddle and went to some of the highlights in Turkey, which were really fascinating in their own right. But this day 3, or paddle 3, we started, and
The top button, Vic.
yeah, there we are. We started there. And this was, for me, the most interesting day. This really made it for me, day 3. And I'll tell you why. Because we left here and we went to a beach just there, and this was a 1-mile trip through this beautiful turquoise water. The waters were very shades of blue. There was a normal blue, there was a royal blue, there was an indigo blue. It was just amazing just to look at the water and think that, we can paddle in this kind of water. And of course it was 27 degrees water of temperature, which was great whenever we got to the beach here. Let's see.
Skip that one.
Yeah, we set off. We set off a 1-mile trip, and we were heading for this little area here. And you can see the sort of color of the water just as we took off, and it varied in shades of blue depending, I guess, on the depth. But it went from greens to different shades of blue. It was just amazing. And of course the sky was blue, there wasn't a cloud in sight. And we arrived then at this beach just here. This is the beach here, and we landed, and of course it was just beautiful swimming. What lovely water. And then there was a number of other boats commercial boats that had come. It was fairly popular. And there was actually a guy there learning how to roll with an instructor, and it made me think of Siska's activity. But it was just lovely to relax here in the sun and swim in the water. And in the area there was this was a remains of a church, which was probably dated to about 400 AD. And the Romans, I guess, became Christians around about 300 AD with Constantine and so forth. And so this was the remains of a church, so they told us. And as you can see, I'm dressed for the sun because I've got leggings and I've got totally covered. Because some years back I was kayaking in Belize and nearly got fried thinking I could just go in a shirt with shorts, but that was a lesson which I'll never forget. So that's the way I dressed up. Looked as if I was going to the Arctic or something. But at any rate, it paid off because I didn't get sunburned. And this was a cistern, and a Roman cistern. The apparently there was no water in the sense of wells on the island, and they collected water, rainwater, in cisterns, and that's what they used for a water supply. And they also used it apparently to sell to passing boats which were looking for water, so they had a trade in selling water to other boats. And so it was a very relaxing time. And then we set off along that coast of Kerkova Island, and this is where there was a city which was a Lydian city, which was built probably in, well, the Lydians hung out apparently between the 3rd and the 7th century BC. And it had been a city, and then the Romans came and sort of took it over, and they had this city on the island. And then there was a huge earthquake in the year 200 AD, and it was half the city was wrecked, or probably all of the city was wrecked, and the whole area apparently sank 4 meters, and half the city ended up in the water, and parts of it were still left on the land. And you can see this one here where Norm is just paddling past some steps. And you could really sort of imagine, Roman guys coming down in their togas to go to the baths or do whatever they had to do. It was really quite fascinating. And this one here was an aqueduct of some sort, maybe to provide or to channel water to other ships as they were selling water as a trade, basically. Or it may just be an aqueduct channeling water into the area. And the earthquake that they had in 200 AD, of course, Turkey is in an earthquake zone on a excuse me, it's on a zone. And well, in 2023 they had that huge earthquake in southeastern Turkey, and it killed about over 50,000 people were killed.
There was an earthquake today.
And there was another one apparently in Istanbul, and there was reports that people in Istanbul were rushing around, and they had problems obviously with the earthquake, and they were scared of it. And so earthquake zones were pretty common in that area and still are. And this one happened at about 200 AD. And the results were these things. And of course the beauty here was with a kayak, we were able to draw 4 or 5 inches of water and kayak over the ruins, whereas commercial boats that took tourists out had to stay off a couple of 100 meters because of the depth. So we were able to go over, and you could look down in the water and see the outline of various rooms and baths and so forth. And that was really all we saw, was the actual walls, the outline of the walls, because the amphora and any statues or anything like that had all been looted over the years, and they weren't there. But it was really quite fascinating to look at them. And I see this was the aqueduct, and this was another area here, and there's 2 little crosses there, which was suggested that they were possibly put there by the Crusaders at a later stage. But just going along the coastline and looking down, and you could see these outlines of walls of baths, and you could imagine the Romans coming in and swimming or bathing and just doing their daily thing and walking down these steps and so forth. I thought was really quite fascinating. So we went on. There's more there. You can see what we think was the outline of probably a bath or a room, and there's parts of walls up on the actual land which hadn't sunk. So it was just remains was really quite intriguing, really, when you think of the the age of these things. So we then went along there, and then we cut back over as in that graph there, the chart that we were looking at earlier, to a place called Samina, which was back on the mainland, so to speak. And it was a little place which was only approachable by water. There's no land access to it, and it was a little old fishing village, and then has been taken over really as a tourist resort now. And there was lots of boats, but you can see the little villages here, and there was a fort at the top, which apparently was built by the Romans and used in later years for defense against possible pirates and so forth. Everywhere had lots of history, and really dotted all over the parts of the landscape were these sarcophagi. And it's just amazing. These were probably Lydian sarcophagi, maybe 2,500 years old, and they were quite a lot of them. As you can see, there's 3 or 4 of them there, and there'll be another one that Norm took a liking to later on another slide. And it was, it really sort of fired the imagination that these different civilizations had come through what was Asia Minor in the old days, and there was the Lydians, and there was the Assyrians, and the Persians, and the Greeks, and the Romans, and the Ottomans, and then there's modern Turkey now. So it was for me, this particular trip, this paddle was the highlight as far as I was concerned. And this was a shot from up here, just showing the area, and that's the Kotova Island that we paddled along, and then we came over to here. And then we had lunch, and then we went back, paddled back to Gocek, and that was the end of that. So I'll hand this one over to Pat, the fourth paddle.
All right.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you. So as much as Vic and Norm liked the third paddle, which I did too, but the fourth day was probably my favorite because we did a little more than just paddling. So we went from Gocek, where we were staying, to Topak Island, which is sort of adjacent to the bay that we'd paddled to the previous day. And as Norm and Vic have alluded to, there's history everywhere. So here we are coming into this little island, and up, whoops, getting ahead of myself. Top one, okay. I think.
Just below the very top.
Oh, I see. All right. There is a fortress there, which might be Byzantine. I don't know that anyone knows definitively. As we disembarked or went ashore, we were tripping over Roman ruins and Corinthian columns, and it was remarkable, really. So the continuation of that paddle was, so here we are, actually, there's where where our kayaks are, and we came up here, and you can see all the ruins, which are mostly Roman. And then I'm getting ahead of myself here, because we came from that island down a very long inlet, at the end of which was this restaurant. And there's nothing else around, and there's no amenities, there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's nada. And so they somehow eked out a living here with this little restaurant and a small marina. And while we were there was a couple from Denmark, I think, having lunch. So anyway, we beached here, and Alper, our guide, said, "Okay, who wants to go for a hike?" Bearing in mind it's 35 degrees out. So off we go. I have to go back now. Yeah, so there we are, heading off, and it's very dry. As Vic said, there's no water anywhere, and unless it's ocean. This is a Lycian village that was crumbling and falling into the water. Ruins everywhere you go. Then when an hour after departing, we arrived back at the restaurant for, and I don't know if you can see it or not, fish and chips dinner. Yeah. There's the fish, whole grilled sea bream. It was absolutely delicious. Fresh tomato salad and these chunky French fries. The meal was, and I guess maybe because we'd worked up an appetite, but it was absolutely delicious. So that was the fourth day. It was a long day, but as I said, I really enjoyed that one. So our fifth paddle was a shorter paddle because we were going to be transferred by van to the city of Kash. So we just exited from Yucataz to out towards Kokova and sort of hung a left turn and went east along the shoreline and came to Hamady Bay, which this Hamady Bay here was named after an Ottoman cruiser that had gotten into serious trouble in the Balkan War, and one of the Balkan Wars, I think it's the second one, and was hiding in this bay and managed to evade the people who were attacking. The boat managed to evade the attackers. And so it became a symbol of, ultimately it became a symbol of Turkish resistance, but at the time it was Ottoman. In any case, you can see more ruins up this hillside here. As I say, they were absolutely everywhere. So then, this was another little bay. We came in for a swim. And at the top here is a fort, which could have been a Crusaders fort, could have been Byzantine. Nobody seemed to really know who built it. It's quite rustic. But while everybody else is down here swimming, Norm and I climbed up to the top of that hill, again in 35-degree weather. We have to have our heads examined at some point. But it was really, and there I am at the top, and you can see the view. It's just magnificent. So when we got back into our kayaks, we continued on along the shoreline here, and some of us went over to this area here, and I will show you what we discovered there. This really quite interesting, huge cave. You used to be able to kayak in and out of it, but people were defacing it, and so they've put a chain across, and you can just go and have a peek in and then come out. And there's lots of birds and bats and things nesting in there. And then our last day was in the city of Kash, which is a beautiful little port city, ancient city, going back again to Roman times and before. And it's a big yachting haven now. There's a lot of ports along the east coast of Turkey west coast of Turkey, that have become havens for yachting, like Bodrum and Kash and Antalya. The city itself extends up here on the hillside. This is the downtown area, a nice big square here for events. Beautiful old streets. This is right in the middle of one of the streets, a Lycian sarcophagus. And then this was a Friday, so there was market day, and everything you could possibly think of, all kinds of fruits and vegetables. And that's one of the things that amazed me about Turkey, is the production of agricultural production there is just incredible. They cook, of course, with a lot of herbs and spices. So this is everything you could possibly imagine, and then some. And then here's the Roman Theater of Antipholus. which has been restored and was, as you can see, was set up for an event that evening. But yeah, just pretty remarkable, built into the hillside. So I think it's actually Greco-Roman, I think they call it, but in any case. And here's our last dinner, which Alper, who was at the head of the table there, his wife, and she's probably in the kitchen. Anyway, she prepared an absolutely stunning meal. I wrote down all the things that we have had because it was a traditional Turkish meal. So we had hummus, baba ganoush, carrots and yogurt, tzatziki, a vegetarian lentil meatball, dolmathas, tomatoes and eggplant with homemade bread for appetizers, meat stuffed eggplant, and rice for the main, and it was vegetarian, and then a bread and custard pudding for desserts. So she must have been in the kitchen for a couple of days, but it was, and you can see his home is on the top of that hillside above, overlooking Cache. He's got a spectacular view. Anyway, that was our last evening together, and as you can see, it was a pretty spectacular one. And I'm just going to leave you with one more slide. Yeah, 1 foot in the grave. I don't know. You could come up with something better. Anyway, yeah. So that was our trip. So anyway, and if anyone wants any more information, they can come and talk to us. Oh, Mimba?
Yeah, any wine for the last night dinner?
Any wine?
Any wine? I don't think we did have wine. No.
But there was lots of wine. We had all the other restaurants where you could buy wine. And in fact, they made really nice wine in different parts of Turkey. So wine is quite common. You could buy beer all over the place. The national drink is, what's it called? Rakos, which is sort of like the French pastis. It's a clear liquor, tastes licoricey. You put water in it and it gets a little cloudy. So that's the main drink. But even though it's a very Muslim country, in theory, in practice it's like anywhere else in the world. Only about 10% of the population pays any attention to religion. Everybody else just lives a normal life.
So this is Norm being cryptic.
That's a good one.
Yep. Anyway. Any other questions, concerns? I have this happened to come in the mail today, so this is a little brochure put out by Exodus, if anybody's interested. They can.
There was a question over here.
Oh.
Did you have much interaction with the local people?
Well, not so much on.
Your guide and.
Yeah, not so much on our, although when we went to the local restaurants
Yeah,
in Ukachaz, we did for sure.
Yeah.
But all of us had toured around other parts of Turkey prior to, so yeah, we did. And I'd been to Turkey 10 years prior, but it was on a cruise, so you only see where, the cruise ship lands and what have you. We were staying near Kusadasi, which is close to Ephesus, and we were in amongst local people and shopping at the markets and very friendly, just lovely people. Couldn't ask for anything nicer.
Yeah.
Yes, the Turks were very welcoming and friendly. You sort of felt valued in a sense, and they try to encourage tourism, of course.
Yeah, but they were genuine.
And great food, great food.
Yeah. Jenny?
So I heard at least 3 times about more 35 degrees Celsius. So would you, obviously you'd recommend going to Turkey.
Well, we have to
Or
put it
would
in
you
context.
recommend, can I finish my sentence?
Yeah.
Louder! Okay.
Yeah.
Would you recommend going early June again, or is there a better temperature time?
Well, I think it was an anomaly. It's not normally that hot. I do remember that we're in the southern part of Turkey. So where we were originally near Kusadasi was a little cooler. I would say it was in the high 20s during the day. My neighbor just got back from Turkey, and she said it was actually cool. So, and she toured all over. So I think to some extent it's the luck of the draw.
We were there in November, the full month of November, and it was perfect the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And all the time I was there before this trip, it was in the mid-20s, all over the parts of Turkey I was in. But they had a heat dome come in the last few days of our trip, and that's what drove the temperatures up to the mid-30s.
And there was no wind, it was, yeah, it was quite,
so it was hot.
quite
But
hot.
fortunately, we were on the water, so we were able to jump in the water all the time to cool down. But yeah, I would recommend, I wouldn't go in July and August, I think it'd be stifling hot.
And wasn't June 1st when the kids got out of school?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so go before that.
Yeah.
In the area that we were, it was interesting, didn't see any seaweed.
That's
No.
right.
And we actually didn't see very much sea life in the except turtles, which we only saw a few, and birds. There were very few birds,
That's
a few
right,
seagulls, no seals, and very little seaweed, if any. So it's just the way it is.
Any other questions? Okay, we're
done.
We're done.
What an adventure. I'm really envious of your trip. Lucky guys. Next month, same place, same time, but it's our last meeting here. So please show up if we don't see you on the water or walking around or someplace else. Jane, is there anything you want to add?
Thanks, Fred. Just a reminder, save the date, June 4th, for the Siska Kayak Fest that will be held at 7th. Did I say 6th? Sorry. 4th? Oh my gosh. I thought I said 7th. June 7th. I repeat, June 7th. It's going to be held at Cabernet Gyro Park, the Siska Kayak Fest, so save the date. I will be sending out an email this week, and actually the next day or so. There are some posters on the back table there. If you have anywhere that you think you could post them, please take one or two and put them up, because it is welcoming to all the community. You do not have to be a Siska member to attend. And there's all sorts of fabulous things planned, thanks to our off-water committee, Rod, Dan Dunaway, and Julie. Rod, are you needing any more volunteers for that event?
I think we're pretty good.
Okay, thank you. And I think that is it. So thank you, everyone. As Fred said, next month will be our last meeting here and our last meeting for this season, and then we will meet again in September. Thank you.